This is Mrs. Verhagen. I teach English and different subjects in the Burlington High School. And one of my favorite authors of all time is Langston Hughes. As a poet, as a short story writer, also as nonfiction. And this particular short story he wrote is probably my favorite and is still very interesting to discuss and talk about today. It's called Who's Passing for Who? And it was written in 1952, but the setting of it is really fun because it's set in New York during the time of the Harlem Renaissance. Who's Passing for Who by Langston Hughes. One of the great difficulties about being a member of the minority race is so many kind-hearted, well-meaning bores gather around to help. Usually, to tell the truth, they have nothing to help with except their company, which is often appallingly dull. Some members of the Negro race seem very well able to put up with it, though in these uplifting years, such was Caleb Johnson's color social worker, who was always dragging around with him some nondescript white person or two, inviting them to dinner, showing them Harlem, ending up at the Savoy, too much to the displeasure of whatever friends of his might be out that evening for fun, not for sociology. Friends are friends, and unfortunately, over-earnest uplifters are uplifters, no matter what color they may be. If it were the white race that was ground down instead of Negroes, Caleb Johnson would be the first to offer the Nordics the sympathy of his utterly inane society under the impression that somehow he would be doing them a great deal of good. You see, Caleb and his white friends, too, were all bores. Or so we who lived in Harlem's literary bohemia during the Negro Renaissance thought. We literary ones considered ourselves too broad-minded to be bothered with questions of color. We liked people of any race who smoked incessantly, drank liberally, wore complexion and morality as loose garments, and made fun of anyone who didn't do likewise. We snubbed high-hatted, any Negro or white, luckless enough not to understand Gertrude Stein, Ulysses, Man Ray, the Thurman, Jean Toomer, or George Anvil. By the end of the 1920s, Caleb was just catching up to Dos Passos. He thought H.G. Wells was good. We met Caleb one night in Smalls. He had 3 assorted white folks in tow. We would have passed him by, but with a nod, had he not hailed us enthusiastically, risen, and introduced us with great acclaim to his friends, who turned out to be school teachers from Iowa, a woman and 2 men. They appeared amazed and delighted to meet all at once 2 Negro writers and a black painter in the flesh. They invited us to have a drink with them. Money being scarce with us, we deigned to sit down at their table. The white lady said, "I've never met a Negro writer before." The 2 men added, "Neither have we." "Why, we know any number of white writers," we 3 dark bohemians declared with bored nonchalance. "But Negro writers are much more rare," said the lady. "There are plenty in Harlem," we said. "But not in Iowa," said one of the white men, shaking his mop of red hair. "There are no good white writers in Iowa either, are they?" we asked superciliously. "Oh, yes, Ruth Succo came from there." Whereupon we proceeded to light in upon Ruth Succo as an old hat and to annihilate her in favor of Kay Boyle. The way we flung names around seemed to impress both Caleb and his white guests. This, of course, delighted us, though we were too young and too proud to admit it. The drinks came and everything was going well, all of us drinking and we 3 showing off in a highbrow manner, when suddenly at the table just behind us, a man got up and knocked down a woman. He was a brownish-skinned man. The woman was blonde. She rose, he knocked her down again. Then the red-haired man from Iowa got up and knocked the colored man down. He said, "Keep your hands off that white woman." The man got up and said, "She's not a white woman. She's my wife." One of the waiters added, "She's not white, sir. She's colored." Whereupon the man from Iowa looked puzzled, dropped his fists, and said, "I'm sorry." The colored man said, "What are you doing up here in Harlem anyway, interfering with my family matters?" The white man said, I thought she was a white woman." The woman who had been on the floor rose and said, "Well, I'm not a white woman. I'm colored, and you leave my husband alone." Then they both lit in on the gentleman from Iowa. It took all of us, and several waiters too, to separate them. When it was over, the manager requested us to kindly pay our bill and get out. He said we were disturbing the peace, so we all left. We all went to a fish restaurant down the street. Caleb was terribly apologetic to his white friends. We artists were both mad and amused. "Why did you say you were sorry," said the colored painter to the visitor from Iowa, "after you'd hit that man, and then found out it wasn't a white woman you were defending, but merely a light-colored woman who looked white?" "Well," answered the red-haired Iowan, "I didn't mean to be butting in if they were all the same race." "Don't you think a woman needs defending from a brute, no matter what race she is?" asked the painter. "Yes, but I think it's up to you to defend your own women." "Oh, so you divide up a brawl according to races, no matter who is right?" Well, I wouldn't say that. You mean you wouldn't defend a colored woman whose husband was knocking her down?" asked the poet. Before the visitor had time to answer, the painter said, "No, you just got mad because you thought a black man was hitting a white woman." But she looked like a white woman," countered the man. "Maybe she was just passing for colored," I said. "Like some Negroes pass for white," Caleb interposed. "Anyhow, I don't like it," said the colored painter, "the way you stopped defending her when you found out she wasn't white." "No, we don't like it." We all agreed except Caleb. Caleb said in extenuation, "But Mr. Stubblefield is new to Harlem." The red-haired white man said, "Yes, it's my first time here." "Maybe Mr. Stubblefield ought to stay out of Harlem," we observed. "I agree," Mr. Stubblefield said. "Good night." He got up then and left the cafe. He stalked as he walked. His red head disappeared into the night. "Oh, that's too bad," said the white couple who remained. "Stubby's temper just got the best of him. But explain to us, are many colored folks really as fair as that woman?" "Sure, lots of them have more white blood than colored and pass for white." "Do they?" said the lady and gentleman from Iowa. "You never read Nella Larson?" we asked. "She writes novels," Caleb explained. "She's part white herself." "Read her," we advised. "Also, read the autobiography of an ex-colored man." Not that we had read it ourselves, because we paid very, very little attention to the older colored writers, but we knew it was about passing for white. We all ordered fish and settled down comfortably to shocking our white friends with tales about how many Negroes there were passing for white all over America. We were determined to épate la bourgeoisie real good via this white couple we had cornered, when the woman leaned over the table in the midst of our dissertations and said, "Listen, gentlemen, you needn't spread the word, but me and my husband aren't white either. We've just been passing for white for the last 15 years. "What?" "We're colored too, just like you," said the husband, "but it's better passing for white because we make more money." Well, that took the wind out of us. It took the wind out of Caleb too. He thought all this time he was showing some fine white folks Harlem, and they were as colored as he was. Caleb almost never cursed, but this time he said, "Well, I'll be damned." Then everybody laughed, and we almost had hysterics. All at once, we dropped our professionally self-conscious Negro manners and became natural, ate fish and talked and kidded freely like colored folks do when there are no white folks around. We really had fun then, joking about that red-haired guy who mistook a fair-colored woman for white. After the fish, we went to 2 or 3 more night spots and drank until 5 o'clock in the morning. Finally, we put the light-colored people into a taxi heading downtown. They turned to shout a last goodbye. The cab was just about to move off when the woman called the driver to stop. She leaned out the window and said with a grin, "Listen, boys, I hate to confuse you again, but to tell the truth, my husband and I aren't really colored at all. We're white. We just thought we'd kid you by passing for colored a little while, just as you said that Negroes sometimes pass for white." She laughed as they sped off toward Central Park, waving goodbye. We didn't say a thing. We just stood there on the corner in Harlem, dumbfounded, not knowing now which way we'd been fooled. Were they really white, passing for colored, or colored, passing for white? Whatever race they were, they had too much fun at our expense, even if they did pay for the drinks. So there's a lot to discuss there regarding expectations and race. And I just also like the little twist at the end. So I hope you enjoyed Langston Hughes' short story called Who's Passing for Who? And it was from the book called Calling the Wind. Thank you. And I'm Mrs. Verhagen.